Hey everybody, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and in today's video we're going to talk about the brand new Sennheiser Momentum 5. This has an MSRP of $399 and it's available in 3 different colors. It comes in black, an awesome new denim blue, and this white headphone, which to me is more of a creamy, warm white with nice brown undertones. Frankly, I love the looks, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So before I get any further, Sennheiser did send this to me for review. They never fix what I say about it. I just want to disclose where that comes from. They also didn't sponsor this video, and I don't do any special branding affiliate links in the description below. However, I do have generic purchase links in the description, as well as an Amazon one if that ever comes out. So I always want to disclose all that. It's not sponsored, but now you know where it came from. One of my favorite things to do is the new Too Long Didn't Watch chapter, because I want to save you some time and help you decide if you want to watch the rest of this video or not. I already mentioned the price being $400, which is a $100 increase over the Momentum 4 and a $100 decrease from the HDB 630. I will be comparing them later, but in terms of feature set and improvements, there are 2 killer things that from the consumer space and what most people use a headphone like this for are absolutely amazing. One is it has a user replaceable battery. Never really been done in this category. I'm sure I'll get some comments of other headphones that eventually added or had it that I didn't know. But from all the ones I reviewed and been exposed to, a user swappable battery by just removing a few Phillips screws inside one of the cups is pretty awesome. It also has big improvements in active noise cancellation performance. It's actually the best ANC performance of any Sennheiser headphone I've ever reviewed, including the more expensive HDB 630. They added aptX lossless. They added Dolby Atmos with head tracking, which is coming in a future firmware update. And a firmware update is adding Bluetooth 6. The other thing they did is improve the sound quality. It sounds better, noticeably better than the Momentum 4, and it's different but still really good compared to the HDB 630. The HDB 630 adds parametric EQ, and it's kind of meant more for audiophiles, or at least people who really know how to customize the sound. It's a more neutral tuning. This has the elevated bass that kind of is known for the Momentum lineup, but it has better voice tuning. So like the timbre and natural sound, to me, is just a better overall package. And even though it has 8-band EQ, graphic EQ instead of parametric, it also has sound customization. So all of these improvements come together for a really formidable option at $400, and I think it's going to stand well against a lot of competitors. One of the most important things with consumer tech products isn't just the specs and the sound quality, it's your general everyday user experience, and that starts with the case. And this might not be something most people think about, but it's such a strong thing I want to emphasize, because when you travel, space is at a premium. And the cases might look similar from the top-down view, but the side, when you look at the thickness difference, for essentially the same dimensions of a headphone, this takes up significantly less room, and they even have like a scalloped indent for where the headband is inside. So space is at a premium for you like it is me. I often gravitate towards products that take up the least amount of space as possible. I really love what they did with the case improvements, and this little design right here, it's small, but that chamfered edge just makes it look even more premium. When you open it up, you don't have the airplane adapter anymore that you got on the older model and the HDB 630. However, I've never used that. I think most people don't nowadays, considering how tech has evolved and what people generally travel with. You do get a USB-C to C cable. It's no longer USB-C to A, so I like that. And of course, you still get the 2.5 to 3.5 analog connection. You can obviously replace it with your own in case you don't like the 90 degree, but I don't use this too often. And I will say though, this does work as a USB-C headphone. So you can plug this into your computer and get real-time lossless audio through that in case you don't want to deal with latency or Bluetooth. This is huge for me because as a content creator, if I only want to travel with one headphone, Bluetooth is great for like general, content consumption on the plane, connect to a tablet, whatever. But then when I want to do some editing, I can plug the USB-C cable directly into my computer and then use it as a wired headphone. The same problem exists though, I will call this out. This is one of the biggest detriments to me to this headphone is when you try to use the microphone in USB mode, it still switches to hands-free profile, which if you're familiar with that, it makes the audio sound terrible as soon as your microphone is active. So if you're planning on using this headphone for conference calls, I strongly suggest a dedicated mic of any kind. Even the built-in mic on your laptop will give you a better sound experience than this because it's not using a very limited bandwidth protocol to handle two-way communication. So the chip just works as if it's a Bluetooth headphone, even if you're using USB-C in terms of microphone support. So I'm not crazy about that, but it does work for the listening side of things absolutely fine. And then on the analog connection, that is active. Your headphone has to be on. You obviously don't need an expensive amp because of that. Anything with a headphone jack will power this, and you can even plug this into a game controller, for example, and it'll still work. Codec and connection support are all very similar between these three models. They all support aptX-based protocols, including aptX, aptX HD, and aptX Adaptive. The HDB630 adds LC3, and the Momentum 5 does not have LC3, but it does have aptX lossless and 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz lossless audio support. So it has, in terms of general consumer protocols, I actually think this is the better option because you don't usually see LC3 being used too much unless you have particular products and you know you want LC3. Obviously, there's a headphone that exists for that, but this is pretty feature rich, and that's in addition to eventually supporting Bluetooth 6 once the firmware update comes out. The HDB630 includes one extra thing, and that's the BTD 700 wireless adapters. You can purchase that separately and add it, so that does add to the total cost in case you know you wanted it, and that brings the HDB630 into more consideration. I just sipped it up, but I just wanted to show you this. It's super small, but this allows you to get the latest Bluetooth protocols via USB. This is super handy if you're an Apple user. So all of these protocols like aptX lossless and HD, they don't mean anything if you're just using an iPhone and you're planning on pairing to it. You're just going to have AAC anyway. So if you want to take advantage of a higher bandwidth Bluetooth protocol, then even if you still like everything else about the Momentum 5, I would consider an adapter like this because that's going to give you a lot more capability in terms of wireless performance with lower latency and higher quality sound. Staying consistent with the Sennheiser design language for their Bluetooth headphones, they didn't really reinvent the wheel here with the Momentum 5. There is one key improvement, and that's in the cup. Before you had this groove with the little holes for the microphone system, and the Momentum 5 is clean because they have the microphones integrated into the outside edge of the cup. They actually double the amount of active noise cancellation microphones used on the Momentum 5, which is part of what's giving it an improvement in performance over the 4 and even the HDB 630. So it's a small change, but I do like the design. Just like all the other Sennheiser headphones here, you get the telescoping yoke and you get rotation front and back. So this is cool because if you want to wear it around your neck, you can. Clamp force, at least like squeezing your neck, it's not terrible. I've definitely had worse. You do feel a little pressure right here. So it's kind of nice that you can rotate it. This direction is far too tight for me, and up is not comfortable either. So I guess in theory, the rotation is not going to be helpful here. This is more for stowing it or laying it on your desk. It's just nice that you have ergonomics that fit to your head. Now, you still get a fabric top. You can see that the headband itself looks just a little bit wider, and they changed the logo. If I can keep my hand still. So a little bit of a difference. This has like that leatherette headband on here. This feels really premium on top, where this is like a nice fabric. This should be rather durable, and I like that the logo is a little bit more bold. Again, it just adds to the whole premium side of things. Another thing Sennheiser also kept relatively the same across the board is the ear pads, because the dimensions and mounting system is all identical amongst all three of these models. So any aftermarket pad that's worked on the Momentum 4 and the HDB 630 will work. Just keep in mind, if you go to an aftermarket pad that's more breathable, that might help for comfort for at home, but you will lose active noise cancellation performance anytime you get rid of a leatherette pad, just because you're leaking more sound. These pads are very comfortable. They could be a little bit larger. I do have the feeling like when I put them on, I have a little bit of pressure, like a contact point right behind my ear. So if you have larger ears and that bothers you, that's something to keep in mind. So I just want to call that out in case that's an issue or not. I can wear these for a long period of time, and it's still noticeably more comfortable than the Sony XM6s that came out last year, the WH-1000 XM6. I'd much rather be wearing the Sennheiser headphones for a long period of time. As far as controls go, again, they're not reinventing the wheel either. If you have a Momentum 4 or an HDB 630, this is not going to feel any different in terms of control layout. You have a single power button here. You press and hold it to put it in pairing mode, and during a call, if you tap it, it will mute the microphone. Otherwise, you have a touch-based control, which you can customize and even fully disable on the Sennheiser Connect app. Moving up, we'll swipe up for volume, swipe forward to go forward a track, for example, tap to play, pause, and the other interesting one is if you pinch it down or pinch and expand, that changes your active noise cancellation settings. So I'm going to get into noise cancellation performance in a moment, but I just want to do a quick mic test so you can hear what it sounds like. This is what my voice sounds like on the new Sennheiser Momentum 5. Obviously, the mics aren't going to sound fantastic. It's Bluetooth. It's not really meant for that, but I am connected directly to my iPhone using the built-in Bluetooth. So now I'm talking on that same Sennheiser Momentum 5, but I'm using the BTD 700 transmitter that came with the HDB 630. So I wanted to show you the difference in using the built-in Bluetooth on something like an iPhone, which is obviously a very common mobile device, versus the benefit of switching over to a USB adapter that just connects to the bottom of the iPhone. I'm not doing any other changes, but I will point out that even if you have transparency mode enabled so you can hear your surroundings, like the ambient mode, as soon as you enable the microphone, it brings your environment noise down automatically, so you can focus more on the call and hear the other person speaking more clearly. This is what I sound like talking to you on the Sennheiser HDB 630, and I'm using the BTD 700 Bluetooth adapter on my iPhone. And now I'm talking to you on the Sennheiser Momentum 4 using that same adapter used on the other headphones. Again, I just wanted to provide this for some transparency in case you can hear any difference at all, but that's how they all compare. Moving on into sound quality and starting with the objective side first, this is all measured on a Brüel & Kjær 5128. It's a pretty elaborate headphone measuring rig, and it simulates human hearing to an extent. It's how this rig hears this headphone and these other headphones. It doesn't say that's exactly how you're going to hear it, but it does give us a rough approximation. So when we look at the frequency response of the new Momentum 5, kind of like before, common theme, you can see a lot of sub-bass extension when compared to the older Momentum 4. That same deep, rich bass is there. However, they actually tapered it off a little bit. It's not quite as strong, which to me is a good thing because the Momentum 4 frankly just had too much for my personal taste. Now, when we look at the rest of the frequency response and you get into the mid-range tuning, this dotted line represents a diffuse field target for my particular rig, tilted downward. It's generally agreed upon in the voicing side that this can sound closer to a more natural presentation, and you can see that the Momentum 5 is closer to that particular target. The Momentum 4's difficulty is it had less EQ bands to customize the sound, and some of the bands you have didn't always allow you to fully address where the particular issues were with that headphone. So not only do you get the 8-band adjustment on the Momentum 5, but I think it's much closer to an ideal target for me, and it doesn't really require a lot of tuning to get to an ideal sound. When we look at the HDB 630, I'm just going to add that real quick. The HDB 630 has less bass. You can see it's a little bit cleaner, and the voicing is very comparable to the Momentum 5 with a little bit different, mid to high treble tuning. It's a little bit more relaxed sounding. Most audiophiles, I think, will like the HDB 630 more just because it has a more neutral and safe sound. It might not sound as engaging as these headphones to some people. So if you like a lot of sub bass, maybe you watch a lot of movies and you want the explosion to have like really rich impact, then the Momentum series will actually give you a little bit more of that. I think what they did with the Momentum 5 by tapering the bass just a little bit and then increasing the low treble, like the high mids and low treble, while making it sound really natural. This is honestly a really good consumer balance overall for what I think a lot of people are going to like. And it's very, very comparable to the Bose Quiet Comfort Ultra Gen 2s. So those to me kind of represent the best in terms of overall voicing for the mainstream consumer space before you get into the more expensive HDB 630. And just in case you want to see what turning off noise cancellation does, it boosts the mid bass a noticeable amount. It's probably the biggest change, and the tuning in general from the treble is a little bit lower as well. So I think ANC on actually sounds better. Keep that in mind in case you're doing custom EQ. You might want a different setting for ANC on versus off. So moving on into subjective sound quality, this is where the Momentum 5 has a couple unique tricks up its sleeve. One of them is sound personalization. So even though we get the measurements in RAW, that was with the neutral sound profile, there are a lot of sound profiles you can choose from. You can obviously customize your own with 8-band, although it's not as powerful as what you get with the HDB 630. However, they have a new system called sound personalization where it will play different music tracks and have you fine-tune the balance of different instruments, like string instruments versus drums. And then when you're done, you can fine-tune it. It has this really cool futuristic-looking grid system, and you drag the dot to kind of change the way the tuning was. I've seen this on older products like Bang & Olufsen, I believe it was. You could kind of slide a little dot around to shift your tonality and overall treble and bass focus. So this is kind of the similar idea. Originally, I thought it was leaning too dark from what it automatically calculated. But then I started listening to some music and I'm like, shoot, this is a little bit bright. So, because I had customized it brighter than what it thought I needed. played music and then went back to the app and pulled it back down to get closer to what their approximated tuning was. So that is a killer feature, and I think that's what helps kind of bridge the gap between the Momentum 5 and the 630, but the Momentum 5 still has the edge of an active noise cancellation performance. So for how I use Bluetooth headphones, it can sound great because I think the voicing improvements they did alone is a huge improvement over the Momentum 4. And because the peaks are less egregious and you get more customization, there's really a pretty significant upgrade in overall listening experience when it comes to music. You still get that legendary sub bass. It's not gone. It's just maybe not as strong, but it's noticeable and it's still quite powerful. So if you are using it for movies, you still get plenty of bass impact without any issues whatsoever. One thing I want to say on the subjective side though, because it's sound as a whole is not just frequency response, is my unit, this is on my firmware, is not as loud as my Momentum 4. And I noticed that I had to boost the volume a little bit louder than I typically do. So it's the quietest of these three Sennheiser headphones, and I'm not sure why. It's still loud enough for me. I don't blast my music, but I know some people, I've seen comments on products that I thought got loud enough and people thought it wasn't loud enough for them. I think there is a few decibels of overhead that the Momentum 4 gives you, at least out of the box. Maybe different firmware will change it later, but that's probably my biggest area of concern, I think, for this, is the peak volume might not always be loud enough for some, especially if you're listening to tracks that are mastered at a lower volume. For the loudness wars where things are really noisy, it's totally fine. It gets plenty loud, like uncomfortably loud, but some stuff like, you know, older classical music that has a huge dynamic range, you might not have the volume overhead that you might be expecting or hoping for. Aside from that, the general sound profile is fantastic. I listen to a lot of EDM in addition to other genres, whether it's audiophile testing or not. And on the EDM side, it's just a blast. You can easily boost the areas that help bring out synths. That bass impact is excellent. And then transitioning over to rock and acoustic stuff, the voicing really comes through there. And I think it has just a really good balance of treble overall. It doesn't have the same like spikiness in the treble that the Momentum 4 has, where the Momentum 4 sounds like really deep bass, a little bit darker vocals, and then once in a while a treble will just cut through and it can be a little bright and sparkly in that one area. Whereas the HDB 630 is just neutral and just sounds right, because I'm not as crazy about tons of bass as I think some people are. So just purely on music, the 630 to me is the better headphone. This is super close, and I think what's really important to call out here is a lot of people aren't chasing neutral sound. They want a lot of bass, and this gives you really strong bass, but also backs that up with excellent mid-range tuning, and I think it's the best way to have fun and exciting sound, but still have it sound natural and very rewarding to listen to. So I mentioned earlier that this has Dolby Atmos, and they eventually plan to release head tracking, which is not something I'm a huge fan of. I like head tracking and the ability to turn it on and off, but I don't believe in launching products and then saying all these things are coming later. I wish it was just fully fleshed out at launch. So I did test this with Dolby Atmos, however, and it does still change the sound a little bit even in its current state. So you do lose a little bit of volume overhead even further. It's not much, but it makes everything just slightly quieter because it's trying to give itself extra wiggle room, I think, in terms of amplitude, phasing, time delay, all of that, to kind of create a more spatial sound. I also found that enabling Dolby Atmos did change the sound a little bit, and it wasn't just the spatial side of things. The bass and treble get a little bit softer. So like if you're used to a tighter, more impactful, hard-hitting bass, enabling Dolby Atmos kind of takes that edge off and it makes it just a little bit softer and more pillowy. And surprisingly, a similar thing happens with the treble. It's not that I ever found the treble grating before, but if you listen to it with Dolby Atmos on for a while and then you switch back to Dolby Atmos off, in some cases the treble sounded a little bit too exciting and busy compared to what I was expecting. It's almost like your ears get used to it. So it does have some utility and it is fun to listen to. I wouldn't think it's like a feature that you just leave on forever, but at least it's not a total gimmick, and I did have some benefits from it. Before I wrap up the video, I did want to make a comparison to the headphone that I've used the most when I travel, and that's the Bose Quiet Comfort Ultra Gen 2s. And these replaced my older Gen 1s because I love that one as well. Part of the reason why I liked it, and I alluded to this in the beginning with this case, is how compact the case is. When you look at it from a top-down view, the Bose case is a little bit smaller in terms of width. It's comparable in height, but the Sennheiser case actually has a little bit more going for it in terms of depth. And then the integrated like hole/handle is super convenient as well. So different design in terms of how it stows away. The reason why I like the Bose is because it sounds fantastic, it's incredibly comfortable, which is so important to me, and the noise cancellation works excellent. So even though I like the Sennheiser HDB630 more purely from a sound quality perspective, for the use case of how I use my wireless headphone, the Bose Quiet Comfort Ultra Gen 2s and the Momentum 5 are actually better for me because this is comparable comfort and I like the swappable battery and all of that, but the active noise cancellation improvements alone are quite huge. And to me, taking that edge off on the plane is just a really nice feature. And the fact that you can get that for that price. So the Bose, the difference is when you first put these on, they actually don't have the same active noise cancellation performance as the Sennheiser Momentum 5 because it's almost like an instantaneous reduction in sound. The Bose tends to train itself. So when you first put it on, you hear more noise and then it's slowly like turning the volume down until it gets to an even quieter level. But very comparable ANC. I still think the Bose has the edge overall, but the fact that they're even in the same ballpark of each other is quite a feat. Considering what you get these headphones for, I think these are actually some of the most competitive products to each other because they both have incredible sound quality. The feature set is rich. They have excellent noise cancellation, like good enough where, you know, you're splitting hairs for the differences between them. So it's just a matter of if you have a preference of one over the other. Maybe you have a brand preference, but I think that most people that owned either of these would be happy with either of them. And there's obviously a ton of models to choose from out there. Like the Sony XM6 has class-leading noise cancellation, but I didn't get along with the comfort as well for long periods of time. I would much rather be using the Momentum 5 or the Quiet Comfort Ultras. This has comparable sound quality as well. The bass is not as deep, but it's a little bit warmer sounding. And I think the treble and upper mids, like the low treble upper mid area, might even be slightly better on the Bose, but we're splitting hairs. And I think once you do the sound calibration on this, this can be the same or even better suited towards what you're looking for. So these both have incredible potential to please the majority of the people out there. And with that being said, that about wraps up the video. So I hope you found what you were looking for. I know this product is in a very highly competitive market, but I think the Sennheiser Momentum 5 does so many things of what people are looking for that this is actually one of my strongest recommendations in this category, aside to the Bose, not necessarily better or worse. So the color choices, the feature set, the improvements they've made over their prior models, I just think this is an awesome launch. I think it would have been cool if they had parametric EQ, just like the more expensive HDB 630, then it would have been a home run. But this is damn near close. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I can see you at the next video. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.